Liberty Grove Town Board. The clerk will note all supervisors, with the exception of Mr. Cavazos, are present, in addition to the clerk treasurer and our administrator. And as a side note, Bullwinkle is sitting in place of Lou. Bullwinkle tends to be our substitute when one of us are not here, so he doesn't speak as much as Lou does, but some way that could be welcomed. Welcome, everybody. I thank you for coming. If you have cell phones, if you wouldn't mind putting them on vibrate or off so as the meeting is not interrupted. And a reminder to the board to please speak into the microphones. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we need to approve the agenda, and please note number 9, it should be out. And I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented, with the exception of number 9 being removed.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have the minutes of 9/18 board meeting. Are there any additions, corrections?
I move to approve the minutes of the 9/18/19 board meeting.
Second.
Okay, I did have one little thing I want to call your attention to on page 2. Third from the bottom, budget hearing and special town date. I think that should be clarified. Town meeting.
You mean as in,
Should be town meeting.
Aren't we going to change that with number 13?
yes.
Pardon?
Aren't we going to change that with
Oh,
number
you want
13?
to-
Well,
word meeting.
eventually, but this is
Yes.
minutes, so.
Oh, okay.
I will add the word meeting into
Yeah,
the
please.
title.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. All right, we have the bills. Are there any questions on the bills? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Ward. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Administrator's report, Bud.
I met with the Historical Society last month regarding the Klinke Garage. Their immediate concern was some of the bills and the old paperwork that were in the building and getting deteriorated due to moisture and condensation or whatever. So they took some of that stuff out and put it up in the barn for safekeeping, and they made a list of all the items they took to keep up there, including Gus's coveralls. We met with Mr. Schussler on the 17th, who was working on affordable housing, moving along with that. On the 25th, there was orientation at the Highway Department on the TRIP program coming up. Every 2 years, there's a certain amount of money allocated to municipalities for road projects. The deadline will be the 1st of December. It's all submitted electronically this year instead of sending it into the county highway commissioner. And the local selection committee will meet on December 10th. I'm on that committee and screen the applications. Normally the top 7 get selected. The criteria is the type of project you have, safety issues, how much it's going to cost. So we've typically been getting around $20,000 every 2 years for highway maintenance or projects. Tomorrow I'm going to meet Steve Parent. He's going to go over the possibility of putting bike paths and widening out Mink River Road on that intermodal or local modal. whatever it's called.
Multimodal.
What is it?
Multimodal.
Multimodal?
Multi.
Some kind of modal.
Uh-huh.
A project that the state's got $75 million to distribute. So deadline on that one is December 6th. There was a webinar on that on the 30th, a day or two ago, and we've got all the forms here and whatnot just to get ready to send that in. The staircase has been shored up at Port Timor Park. I've been down there in some semi-rough wavy weather. It looks like it should hold up, at least for the water. Hopefully the ice doesn't get too high next spring. Water levels have been going up and down. The little gray shack at the Gills Rock purchase has been surrounded by water again a couple days ago. So that, we talked to Mike Carr today, and he said this time of year the water should be going down, but it's not. So it's a little different than normal. And the paving is done. The guys are working on the driveways and the shoulders. So we're all set for that. Just have to pay the bill and we'll be all set for the next round in the spring. That's it.
All right, thank you. All right, going on to public input, this is the opportunity to address the board on anything you'd like, and also on any agendized item. Anybody have any general comments they'd like to make?
The public meeting, in terms of to the group, yes. I'd like to talk about Pilot Island and the cormorants on Pilot
Right,
Island.
and we have, yes, we have you on the agenda on
Good,
that.
thank you, thank you.
Anybody else on a agendized item, please? If not, going on, fire board report. Nancy, I think that falls to you, right?
I guess it does. I just spoke with Stacy this afternoon. We're going to change, or the fire board date is going to be changed to a later date to accommodate the meeting shuffle, if you will. It does not appear as if the CPI will be available until the second week of October, so that's all.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, going on to number 10, consider the use of town roads by the Snowmobile Club for the 2019-20 season. Are there any questions on that? I've got a question on the fire station, North Fire Station. With the placement of the tower, is that going to interfere at all?
Should not, running alongside the roads only,
Okay.
so after that, if the trails have gone in that area, they'll have to modify them a little bit to get around the guide wires, if that's gonna be an issue.
Okay. Anybody else, please?
Where does it run through Gills Rock Park? Or is it, again, alongside the road area? Right under the fire station property?
Where does it go through Gilroy?
I was wondering, is it actually going through the park, or?
Yes, it is. We're coming through, from the east of the park. I'm trying to think of whose property it is. But anyway, down into the park, we come through the playground equipment.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
We mark
okay.
it quite well around it, so it's a slow area, so we wouldn't interfere with anything. It's a safe, park safely,
Mm-hmm.
so nobody hit anything, cause an accident.
I was just curious.
Okay.
Okay.
We have an enormous amount of, a lot of signs in there to keep it marked very.
A ridiculous amount of sense.
Chuck Cleveland marks.
Yeah,
Chuck-
yeah,
Chuck puts a lot of signs.
yeah, yeah. Chuck.
Thanks, Dennis.
I don't expect a problem in there.
All right, any other questions anybody has? Seeing none, I'll move to approve the request of the Top of the Thumb Snowmobile Club for the 2019-2020 season.
Second?
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Ward. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Consider proposal for the demolition of structures at 11976 Highway 42.
We've gotten 2 proposals in. The deadline for submitting, according to the letter I sent out, was September 20th. We've got Hawkers submitted 1 bid, and it was right around 30,000, I believe, and JF Construction had the lower bid of 26,000 something. So,
I think we had those the last time.
We did.
Yeah.
I've talked to the abatement company who will be starting their work next week. They wanted to get the name and contact information of the demolition company so they can kind of work with them a little bit as to what might be done with the abatement in relation to hauling stuff away once they get done with their work.
Which abatement asbestos people did we end up with?
The,
The one you were in,
no, Bud was gonna go back to the one
right,
with the lower bid, and I don't know if,
It's the one with Ralph. And I can't remember. Advanced,
Asbestos
yeah, the
removal.
10,000,
Zempel.
10,000 something, yeah.
Mhm.
Advanced disposal, advanced asbestos or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I talked to him, they're notifying the DNR, paying them a $700 fee. So now they have to wait 10 days from the day he did that for the DNR to do whatever they might want to do, if they want to come out and check things out or do something. And once the 10-day period has passed, then they'll go in and start, and I believe it's either the end of next week or the Monday after.
so we're in that 10-day period now?
Yes.
so we need to approve the demolition and probably figure out where we're gonna get the money for all this.
Parks and Property by chance? So we're looking at those two bids
That's
that
all.
we had
Right.
paperwork on last week.
So there is the option to take it out of contingency and use the funds that were discussed as being budgeted in 2020 to pay back next year.
okay.
Because I believe it may have been discussed that the economic development line, part of
Yeah, I
their,
don't remember it being discussed at finance.
I think it was eliminated from the economic development, I think.
It most certainly wasn't discussed at finance. I would have remembered that, because I really don't like that precedent being set every year of let's borrow from contingency and pay it back.
No, the money is there.
What's that?
The money is there in 2020.
The money is there for it in 2020?
Yes.
Knowing these guys, you won't get a bill until 2020, so.
Right. Right.
right.
Are they both readily available?
The question was, could it be a winter project? And I said, because both of them got a lot of stuff going on. And I said, well, we'd like to get it done this fall. So they said they could work it in. So whatever that means.
Well,
we'll
they
be-
both had the same answer.
We'll be working on them working it in. We'll be doing.
So we need to approve one of the two demolition bids.
Well, the one is obviously more detailed
The abatement,
No.
no, the demolition.
on the
Hockers.
demolition. And yet the other says all buildings and dispose of building materials
Right.
as a. Well, is there any reason not to go with a lesser bid?
They've both done demolition work before, so
Mhm.
they know what it involves.
And they're both respected local contractors, yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion and we go with the JF Construction, Inc. at $26,210 for the demolition of the property at 11976 Highway 42.
I'll second. Motion by Ward, seconded by Lowry. Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Number 12, consider, resolution 1119, approving the use of carryover tax levy capacity under Wisconsin statute 66.0602, parent 3, parent F, for the 2019 tax levy funding of the 2020 town operating budget.
This carryover is used, section D of the levy limit worksheet, whereby you get credit for several items in there, which if you qualify. One of them is for the unused tax levy from the year before, which is filled in by the Department of Revenue. We always have a levy as we work out and pass here by the town board and the electors. And then what happens is we deduct the computer credit, which ends up to be $300 and some, and this is what this is. And I've kind of ignored this thing in the past. I don't think we've ever done this before, but I went through and did because it's such a small amount, but we've used the credit. They don't ask for the resolution or anything, but this is the resolution now to allow us to use that, and so we can apply it if they get picky on it.
So we could hear, could you speak up a little louder? I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll make a motion then to approve resolution number 1119, the use of the carryover tax levy capacity under that Wisconsin statute. We are talking of a grand sum of $340.
Second.
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Schwengel. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And discussion and possible action related to the Cormorant problem on Pilot Island. We have a guest from,
Oh, you moved that up?
pardon?
Did you move that up?
13.
No,
13, new date.
The budget hearing and special.
oh, I'm
town
sorry, I
meeting.
missed that. 1 second, we'll get there. All right, I'll make a motion, the budget hearing and special town meeting be set for October 29th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have a guest from Washington Island. Please.
Thank you. Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Good. I'm Dan Nelson. I came down from Washington Island, where I spend my spring, summer, fall, and I'm happy to be here with you tonight. I would like to talk about Pilot Island, the cormorants, but before we start, I can answer your first two questions. The answers are 6 feet, 8.5 inches tall. And yes, I used to play basketball. So it is good to be here. I have a couple of handouts for you. And I have some for the participants. If they could, anyone could look on together might be helpful in the participants, but I'd like to give one copy to each board member. Is that okay? So what it is the first handout is the Town of Washington Island. Well, thank you so much. Maybe may have some extra ones of this for the audience. And here you go, for the board. You want to take all of them? Here you go, and then help the audience here too. Would be great. And maybe leave one copy for me. Thank you. And I have one more coming around here for you.
They put these in our packet.
Yeah, that's good to have in the packet.
Yeah.
This one's even more.
Okay.
informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got the packet part. Well, I got the one that came just ahead of you, sorry.
Everyone have a copy now of both handouts. One is the letter, and the other is a one-page handout with the pictures on it. The purpose of my discussion, and I'd like you to be just thinking about this in the background as I'm talking briefly. I will try to be very respectful of your time as I'm talking and keep this to a minimum, but at the same time try to address any questions you have. If I can't answer the question, which is totally possible, I will get back to you if you would like with that answer. My purpose in being here is to encourage the town of Liberty Grove to use their letterhead and write a letter to U.S. Fish and Wildlife to the address that's on the letter that I just passed out to Kathy Niggs. And it would say just one line, and I'll read it out to you, and I can also give a copy of the statement to the recording person too. And if you want to change the statement in any way, you're welcome to change the statement, but it would be simple. It would say, we support the town of Washington Island and their efforts to save Pilot Island from the cormorants. Okay, and it's that simple, and I'll give you a copy of that a little later, but if you want to change the wording, that's fine with me. I'm just trying to gain some support. And being here, one disclaimer is very important for me, and that is I'm not representing the town of Washington. I'm not on the town of Washington board. I have been doing a lot of research for the town of Washington board on this subject and giving them information. I'm also not representing the Friends of Plum and Pilot Islands. That is an excellent organization. I think they do great work. I've been on the board there for a long time, and I have appreciated the effort to be working with the members of that board and the work that's going on Plum Island as well as on Pilot Island. Okay, but I don't want to get in I'll be very candid with you, I don't want to get in a conflict with what I'm trying to do here with the cormorants and and with Friends of Plum and Pilot Island, because they support the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, okay, which is fine, and that's their objective, and I'm totally bought into that. So with that, the initial letter was written on July 17th, and you have a copy of that. You can glance down that. The information that you have in your packet with the color pictures on it is just a summary of some of that information that is in the Town of Washington Island letter. So if you've had a chance to look at that summary, that's fine. But I wanted to actually give you a copy of the letter that Dick Tobey actually sent out. So rather than actually read from the town letter, and I have some extra copies of it here, by the way. Did everybody get a copy of that? If you haven't, I have extra copies of the letter. Everyone have a copy of that? Here we go. Whoops, you okay there?
Yeah.
There we go. So what I'd like to use for our brief discussion here, and please ask any questions anytime I'm going through this, would be very important, is I have this one-page handout that has 2 pictures on it that I passed out. I'm actually going to talk to those 2 pictures, okay, with just the bullets that are there. These bullets are also mentioned in the Town of Washington Island, or the Town of Washington letter that you have in front of you. But this might be a good summary of the information, or hopefully a good summary of the information that's there. First of all, from my perspective, and I've been coming to Washington Island, I have a family history of Washington Island. My great-grandfather helped build Plum Island's lighthouse. My grandfather served 17 years in the life-saving service on Plum Island. My dad served on Plum Island. I am all bought into saving Plum Island and Pilot Island. Okay, you need to understand that, and I have a passion for that. The 2 pictures here, though, demonstrate what has been happening to Pilot Island. And the top picture is what I'm going to talk about first, and that's currently where we are now. If you go out to Pilot Island, this is what you would see. Okay, and you can see what what's there. First of all, you would actually come across a sign on Pilot Island which says no one can have access to Pilot Island within a quarter mile of Pilot Island. So there's no public access to it. And that designation has been put there by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in terms of being a migratory bird breeding ground for cormorants. And that's the beginning. And then, so now if you look at that picture, you can actually see the stumps, barren trees, and invasive, you can't really see the invasive species or the invasive plants that are there. But there are currently, in the last census taking of Pilot Island, 7,534 cormorant nests, or excuse me, 7,534 cormorants on Pilot Island. And there's also hundreds of white pelicans that visit it, and they're also hopping around on Pilot Island. The only other bird on Pilot Island is herring gulls. And the herring gulls and the cormorants are the only two birds that actually nest on Pilot Island. Now, with that number of birds on an island that's 3.1 acres, you can imagine the amount of guano that they produce. And here comes the issue right now, is that the guano there's mounds of guano on Pilot Island. And it's causing unsafe ecosystem in terms of the water surrounding Pilot Island. It's also causing problems on Pilot Island with the vegetation. And it has an adverse effect on our, potentially on our tourism and potentially on property taxes. Now, has it hurt property taxes yet? No. Has it hurt tourism yet? No. But it has the potential to, because when you go to Northport as an example here, in the town of Liberty Grove and get on the ferry boat, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but I know the ferry people do. You can just sometimes smell the guano from the smell coming across from Pilot Island that blows right into that area on Northport. Now, even a closer spot though than that, and I'm not sure if you have homes here or not, so I need some help on this one. But do you have homes in Europe Bay or around Europe Bay? Okay, Europe Bay is actually is closer to Pilot Island than Northport or Washington Island. Washington Island is 3.5 miles away. Europe Bay, I just had, excuse me, I'm sorry, had looked at that recently. It's only 3 miles away. So when you get a prevailing wind, as an example, from the south, and it blows hard coming into Washington Island, we can actually smell the cormorants. It's a putrid smell. It's a very devastating smell. And it's not the way we want to welcome tourists or future home buyers or future residents to Door County or to Washington Island. So I see that as a potential issue. I've also done a lot of research on, I've spent all winter researching. I've spent most of the spring and the summer researching cormorants. And what I've been finding out is that the cormorants have diseases, and they have several types of diseases. I've just listed a few here for you, but they have something called Newcastle disease, and I don't know if you have anyone in the town of Liberty Grove that raises chickens and sells chickens, I'm not sure, but if you do, if the cormorant comes in contact with those chickens, there's a good possibility, if the cormorant is sick from Newcastle disease, which is they may be, because it's a common kind of disease, that can spread to chickens. Okay? If humans touch the guano from a cormorant, they can contact Newcastle disease. And it's the same thing as, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but when your eyes turn red, conjunctivitis, I think it is, something like that. And you have symptoms 3, 4, 5 days, and then you eventually get over it. So those are two of the things, but they also have, in my research, and I've been communicating with U.S. Fish and Wildlife about this, and certainly because U.S. Fish and Wildlife has published in their documents, especially their habitat management plan in 2016, that Newcastle disease is very prevalent. And they actually came out and killed between 100 and 500 cormorants on Pilot Island that had that disease. So it is prevalent out there, it's there. The other diseases that they never told us about, and one of the issues I'm having when working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife is that they don't come and inform, I don't know if they come and inform you, but I know in Washington Island, the last time I've seen them there has been several years. It must probably 10, 15 years, and so it's a long time. But they never tell us what's happening there. The only way I can get this information is to research all the documentation. So in that research, I'm finding that there is West Nile virus that cormorants carry, and they've been detected on Pilot Island. They also have, and I can't pronounce the last names of the two last diseases that are here, but they're long names, and they are not fatal diseases unless someone is really in poor health, and then they contact it, and then there's possibilities of more type of other issues that can arise. Now, one of the diseases that is not listed on here is a disease that has been detected at another island in the Green Bay area, and it's histoplasmosis is what it's called. I see some people shaking their head like they know what it is, and the people that contacted that one was two young children, and they ended up in the hospitals for several days, and that came from the cormorants, because the cormorants had that disease. So I'm really after this thing. I want to get rid of those diseases. I want to see that cleaned up. I don't want to have those diseases. I don't want social media to pick this up and all of a sudden we're finding less tourism occurring or less people coming into these areas. You know, in Washington Island and Liberty Grove may be very similar to that. We depend upon tourism. And so I don't want to ever go down social media that these things are happening, and they haven't happened externally yet, but I never know if it's going to happen or not. So those are some things on the diseases. So we do have a health issue, health and safety issue that I wanted to bring to your attention. And then I'm an avid fisherman. I fish every day if I could. Okay, I'm out there all the time. I love to bass fish. And I've noticed a deterioration over the past several years in bass fishing and perch fishing. Perch fishing used to be, when I was a kid growing up, we could go down and catch jumbo perch, a lot of jumbo perch. Now there are no jumbo perch in Washington Island any longer. So it's a challenge for us to catch fish. Okay, we have a real challenge here. And the bass, it sounds strange, this year we're either catching no bass, which is most of the time, or if we do catch bass, they're very large bass. They're very, probably a 5-pounder, 4 or 5 pounders, which is a large smallmouth. But yet, the situation we're rising is there's no small ones. And my fear is that the cormorants are eating the small fish. So it's going to, I think, eventually cause us tremendous problems in the fisheries. There used to be one of the best smallmouth bass fishing spawning grounds along with lake sturgeon and there's one other fish which I've forgotten the name of, but right between Pilot and Plum Island, but the cormorants have come and they've wiped that out entirely. It's no longer there. So it's causing issues there. So what are we looking for in terms of the future? Any questions so far from either the audience or the board so far? Okay. There's a painting that a lady had painted several years ago, and this picture doesn't do it justice, but it's the green trees that are there, along with the cormorant, along with the lighthouse on Pilot Island. So the first thing we want to do is make it open to the public for the benefit of the American people. So that's the first thing we want to do. We want to reduce the impact of sport and commercial fishing so that fishermen can go out and have larger catches. Now, U.S. Fish and Wildlife does not see the connection between what's happening with the cormorants and the impact on fishing. So I want you to be aware of that. Okay, but they haven't made that connection, that linkage. But I want you to be aware that they're not open for that. Pilot Island also has a registered lighthouse. It's a national treasure. And we'd like to use that as a maritime museum. Then the Coast Guard continues to use Pilot Island, and in that small island, many of our island residents have family members who have served on Pilot Island. So we're tied directly into Pilot Island. We know all about it. We have people that talk about it. We have people who used to go out there to have picnics. And that can't occur anymore. We can't even get on the island anymore. Clean air, environmental safe ecosystem. Now that one I talked briefly about, but the odors are becoming stronger all the time. And there's actually several feet of guano on the ground now on Pilot Island. When they have rainstorms, you can actually see brown water around Pilot Island in that vicinity. So it's polluting the waters. And it's causing us problems. So we want clean air because the quality of life, one of the reasons I love coming to Washington Island all these years, and I've been here every year of my life, is that I enjoy being on Washington Island for the clean air, the hiking, walking, being out on the island, walking around, and I don't want to have to put up the smell. I really don't want to have that putrid smell. Opportunity to swim and dive shipwrecks. Now we have several shipwrecks in that area around Plum Island and Pilot Island. I was talking about a month ago and then as recently as last weekend with a person that's a scuba diver, and he lives in Washington Island. I was asking him about the scuba diving. His comment was that the last time, probably about 3 months ago, he was on Pilot Island scuba diving. He looked over the side of his boat to go into the water, and he could see the guano all over the shipwreck. Okay, just collected all over the shipwreck. And he said, I didn't even want to get into that water. I didn't want to take the chance of contacting that water or getting any trouble with the water. So he didn't go diving there. But it's becoming it is a challenge. The next thing is that we want to restore Pilot Island with healthy trees, new soil. And this is one of the things we're requesting of that we are requesting U.S. Fish and Wildlife do. And then we want to grow community pride. Just as Liberty Grove has long-term residents here, and we used to stop, help me out with the name of this person, but we used to stop here in Liberty Grove as we'd come down 42, and there was a smoked fish place that the gentleman would sell smoked fish through his garage. Does anybody remember that at all? This is many years ago. It's probably 50 years ago. You're probably too young for that. So anyway, it was this town brings a lot of positive memories for me. We used to catch the ferry boat all the time in Gills Rock, going over to the island. So we want to get more community pride. Our kids don't take that much pride in the community. And they look at Plum Island, Pilot Island. Plum Island's coming along okay with the restoration work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. But Pilot Island is really, you can't take any pride in it. It looks like a bomb has been dropped on Pilot Island with all the barren trees that are there. So, and the bottom line then of the discussion is, I don't know if you want to take this up in a separate meeting or if you want to do it tonight. I don't know what your procedures are. But sometime I'd like you to talk about if you would be interested in signing a letter to Kathy Nigg. She's in charge of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to be able to understand your thoughts. And again, I'm not looking for a long, complex thing. I'm just looking for something simple that I mentioned before when I started in terms of just supporting the town of Washington in their efforts to save Pilot Island. Any questions?
Have you had a reply to this July 17th letter?
Yes, I have. And as I would imagine, it did happen. They came back and they gave me all kinds of rationale from U.S. Fish and Wildlife on why they couldn't do anything to Pilot Island, why they wouldn't change it. So they gave me a lot of more facts. So now I've researched all those facts, and now within the next couple of weeks, the town of Washington again is going to send another letter back to Fish and Wildlife defending their need to save Pilot Island. So that's what's happening there. Good question. Thank you. Yes.
What's the background in terms of this? Is this an explosion in terms of population of the cormorants? And do we know what brought this about? Is there a natural cycle going on here?
No,
What's going on?
it's really not a natural cycle because up to I was doing some research on your question over the past couple of weeks in detail. I'm not sure if I have all these numbers correct, but it goes something like this. In 2007, U.S. Fish and Wildlife took ownership of Pilot Island and Plum Island. Now, about 10 years before then, no more than 15 years before then, there was no cormorants on Pilot Island ever in the history of Pilot Island. I've researched that. I can't find any literature anywhere that identifies cormorants on Pilot Island. And it's all the data I'm using with U.S. Fish and Wildlife is their data. I get that together and I give that back to them and say, your data shows that there was no cormorants. So that would be the response. Does that help your answer?
So we really don't know, or we think it's, since it's had the migratory bird designation,
Yeah.
is
It's,
this
I'd
what
say right now.
precipitated that, you think?
Okay, good question. Over the past, since 2006, 2005, in that area, the population of cormorants exploded all throughout this region, northern Lake Michigan, Green Bay waters with cormorants. Okay, they were eating alewife. There's a lot of alewife out there they eat. So they found a lot of forage food and so forth. So they grew and grew, and now they have stabilized it on Pilot Island specifically. The last data was that 3,576 number, but before then was a lower number. The year before that was a little bit lower. The year before that, 3 years ago, was a little bit higher. It was about 4,000 cormorants. So it varies in that range now, but years ago, there was no cormorants. So it's a, yes.
Just add an aside on that. I grew up here in Door County and spent a lot of time as a kid, swimming and playing in the water like most kids. And I don't recall ever seeing cormorants as a kid, or white pelicans. They're relatively new on the scene, and it makes me wonder, is this a result of climate change or global warming, or if those who buy into that, or what's happening to cause new species to move into the area?
Well, first of all, there were none up to 10 or 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And then they found a lot of food to eat up here. They started reproducing and being protected. You have another island here, Spider Island, which has actually more cormorants on it than Pilot Island does. Okay. You have two islands, Hat and Jack Island, down in the Green Bay waters that have a lot of cormorants on them. But they never had cormorants on them before. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is protecting those islands for colonial migratory birds. And the birds that were there, what's happening is the cormorants are so strong and so big that they will not allow those birds to live there. So they just get displaced. And 80% of the cormorants, this is one statistic I've learned you'd be interested in, is that 80% of the cormorants in the state of Wisconsin occur in this area, okay, of Green Bay and Lake Michigan waters right up into here. So we have a huge percentage of the population here, which in my mind needs to be reduced. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife, much to some of their credit, they're starting to reduce the numbers, but not by huge numbers. They're just taking little dings in it, just little reductions. So we're not getting the amount of reduction we need. But as a kid, I used to fish up here too. I never saw a cormorant when I was growing up or fishing. And now when I go bass fishing in the morning, I take my bass boat out with friends and go out there fishing. And lo and behold, where are the cormorants? On top of the bass fishing spawning areas. So now I'm competing with the cormorants, okay, to catch fish. So, other questions? From the audience, any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir. How do you propose to remove the cormorants?
That is a $1,000 question. The question was, how do we propose to remove the cormorants? I don't know. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is going to determine how to do that. They have different means to do that already written in some of their legislation, like oil or eggs. the state of Michigan approves hunting cormorants, which has reduced their numbers, but state of Wisconsin hasn't done that. But oil and eggs would be one way and do it. But cormorants come back to the same area all the time. So if you start oil and eggs, it's going to probably take about 3 years to get rid of all the cormorants because there will be new ones born, and they live about 16 or 18 years age, so they'll keep coming back to that island. So you've got to do this in a progressive way. You just can't do it just in one way. You have to go after it by oil and eggs and then other means perhaps.
Isn't that what birds do, is they have a colony called an apiary, and it's generally on an island, and they need to have some place to exist, and don't
Yeah.
they contribute to the
Yeah.
overall environment?
Yeah, and so now comes the question, good question. So now comes the question, where should they settle? And how many of them should settle? And part of the problem is, I really would not like to see them just displaced off Pilot Island, because they're just going to go somewhere else. So that's why I just want the numbers reduced, because in that way you're still protecting the species, there's still plenty of cormorants in the environment, you still have migratory birds out there, but they're not in the numbers they are now to cause problems with what's going on.
In 1975, they were considered an endangered species in this area.
That's correct, yeah. And then in 1999, they were lifted from the endangered species list, yeah. Yeah. Good question, but that is true. They were endangered species. That's why U.S. Fish and Wildlife at that time established the migratory bird areas. And then in 1999, the first leading group that did that legislatively was the Wisconsin DNR. Actually, was the first organization that came out and took them off endangered species. And then from that, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife had to take them off. That help answer your questions?
Well, the question of how you propose to remove them could have a number of answers, and I didn't understand that you had an answer.
No, I don't have an answer how to remove them. I really don't. I want to see them removed, but I want to do it humanely, and I want to do it in a way that doesn't cause them to fly somewhere else and cause someone else problems. Okay, so but I don't know, U.S. Fish and Wildlife have to be actively involved in determining how to do that. First I have to get their buy-in to do it, which we have not got there yet. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, as questions come up, any more from the audience or the board? I don't want to take too much of your time.
I hope you can keep them off of Plum Island.
Yeah, where there's human activity, like on Plum Island, where a lot of restoration work is being done, they typically will not stay there.
Yeah, they're wary. I've fished up there since '82,
Yeah,
and I've experienced exactly what you professed here, is all that has happened. It's been a mess. But
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife launches up at Gills Rock, we see them go out from time to time, but they don't talk about it. They don't tell us what they do or what they're going to do, so.
I understand it's a very quiet organization, and that's why I can't get data from them by talking to them. I've just got to go into their literature they've published, and I've been so involved in that now, I know a little bit about it. Not a lot, but a little bit. But I agree with you, the fishing has really gone backwards. Anything else?
So what you would be looking for from this body would be some support
Yes,
for the request from Washington Island for U.S. Fish and Wildlife to
yeah. All I'm
take a
looking,
hard look at this and take into consideration the disadvantages and even the dangers. The potential for spillover for diseases into other populations, including humans, is definitely a concern, and it's a real, this happens all the time in nature, and we do have a time of year where we do have a lot of people up here, plus the water situation. But, so what you're asking for is is for this body to support the efforts for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, take some action,
Correct.
to look at it and take some action.
Correct, and what I was thinking of for a starting point, you can change this any way you want, wordsmith it any way you want, just we support the town of Washington in their efforts to save Pilot Island from the cormorants. That's just that simple statement, and just send that to Kathy Niggs would be helpful for us, because we're trying to gather community support. Now I'll be going down into the county a little bit later to try to get some counties there also to support us, but I wanted to come here first. Anything else? Questions? The last comment I have to make then on the way out is that, Bud, thank you for meeting me. Thank you for sharing thoughts with me. Thank you for helping me to be here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I see no reason why not to support their efforts.
I agree.
No, absolutely.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to draft a letter to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service in support of the town of Washington's request to solve the cormorant problem on Pilot Island.
Second.
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Gaz. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Operator licenses?
There are none.
There are none. Correspondence?
We have a email from town's attorney regarding, earlier there was a scheduling conference on Friday in front of the judge, and then mentioning the date of October 10th, getting together with the Sister Bay contingent to work on the mediation item. Also, Europe Lake Landowners Association, concerned about the doggy bags and the baskets that we had in the parks. We were having a problem with them, of home garbage once more in the containers in the parks. And also, thank you for the town putting the cage over the drain on the standpipe on Isleview Road to minimize, actually, we did it to minimize the collection of grass and whatnot that was blocking the surface of the standpipe and slowing the water down from moving to the north side. But also, a side effect was saving some of the turtles that got sucked onto the grate and oftentimes would drown there. This should reduce that from happening. And also thanking the town for supporting Nature Conservancy to help eliminate the Phragmites on the north end of Europe Lake. And also the list of items that were taken from Clinky's Garage, and Historical Society has them in their possession now.
Okay. Future meetings?
As I mentioned, the status conference at 8:15 in front of the judge on Friday. Highway is meeting Monday at 8 a.m. Fire board at 3:15. Is that still on?
That might change.
Okay, I'm not sure on that one because of the pending Consumer Price Index publication on the 10th. Tuesday, the 8th, Parks at 9 a.m., Economic Development at 7 p.m., Library Commission at 1 p.m. On Wednesday, the 9th, Plan Commission at 7. Monday, the 14th, Finance at 1 p.m. On the 16th, Town Board at 7. Preceding the meeting is the Sanitary District at 6:30. Informational meetings on the budget are on the 17th at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. We have flu shots here at the Town Hall on the 18th, Friday, from 11 to 12. And at this point, we have the budget hearing scheduled for the 29th, as mentioned earlier, followed by the special town meeting and the special board meeting, all beginning at 7 o'clock. The idea is that the consumer price index will come out on the 10th, and then the fire commission fire board will know that, and that is why the 7th might not hold true for the fire board. So we're kind of jostling things around now a little bit in relation to what comes out from revenue or Bureau of Labor Statistics on the 10th. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Before I move to adjourn, a quote from Eric Hoffer. In a time of drastic change, it is the learners who inherit the future. The learned usually find themselves equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.